Hi Titans, happy Thursday and welcome back to this channel. My name is Jennifer Wheeler. I am a project manager in the Dean of Students office and I'm back with another webinar. This week we're going to be talking about dating during a pandemic. This is a really timely topic because Valentine's Day is approaching. It's this Sunday, and so we're getting this out just in time. Now, we've been in this pandemic for almost a year, but this is our first Valentine's Day in the pandemic. So I'm really excited for this webinar. I'm actually recording this intro after I saw the presentation from our guest, just because there are some issues with the audio. All that to say, you're gonna love it. It's really good. I know I picked up some really great tips that I hadn't thought about. So I'm excited for you to see it. Make sure you share it with a friend. I'm joined by two awesome students, actually. They are from Titanwall, and they are peer health educators. So what's awesome is that you're hearing from students. As a student, you're hearing from students. So I feel like this information is a lot more relatable. They are in your shoes, so they know what it's like being a student and trying to date during this time. So really excited. Without further ado, I will go ahead and turn it over to them so they can introduce themselves and get us started with this presentation. Oh, and also at the end of the presentation, there is time for questions. We had asked you all to submit questions via Instagram, and you really came through with those questions about sex during this time and how to be safe when you're dating and engaging in sexual activity. So we have the answers for you. Stay tuned to the end to see them.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Frankie, and I'm a peer health educator. My pronouns are he, his, and him. And I'm as I said before, a peer health educator for the sexual health team at Titanwall.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis Louie. I'm also a peer health educator on the sexual health team part of Titanwall, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
So let me go in here and share my screen. Can you all see my screen? Great. So just like Jennifer mentioned, we're here today to talk about dating and safer sex practices during COVID-19.
So this slide is just to reiterate, so sorry, who we are at Cal State Fullerton. So we are the peer health educators of Titanwall, and Titanwall is the health promotion services on our campus. So we work with students to help empower themselves to make healthier decisions during their time in college as well as in their future. We don't tell students what to do, but more so just provide Titans with the knowledge and resources to help and encourage those healthy behaviors. We also work at we also work with professional staff at the Student Wellness Center to provide students with the most up-to-date information, whether that's through our presentations, our hangouts, handbills, social media posts, and anything else that we are presenting to our Titan community. And then lastly, we are students ourselves, so we go through all of the same struggles as all of you, just trying to make healthier decisions. Next slide.
So here's a brief overview of some of the things that we'll be talking about with you today. We're going to be talking about educating yourself about COVID-19 and dating tips. We're also going to be talking about virtual dates, having the COVID talk, transitioning from virtual dates to in-person dates, and safer sex practices as well. Oops.
So educate yourself. So it's very important to educate yourself and the ones around you with the most up-to-date information. So make sure to do your research and stay informed on COVID facts from credible sources. So first off, you should know how COVID spreads. So it can be spread from person to person, between those who are in close contact with each other, so within 6 feet distance. It can also be spread through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks, which can land in people's mouths, noses, and inhaled into the lungs. It can also be spread through particles in saliva, mucus, or breath of people who have COVID. You can also get it from touching a surface that was recently touched by a person with the virus. And also, it's important to know that if someone has had COVID in the past, it does not mean that they cannot get it again. And then it can be spread from people who are asymptomatic as well. So meaning that they do not show symptoms but are still infected. And remember that we still have a lot to learn about COVID and sex, and it's important to keep washing your hands, wearing face coverings, and staying 6 feet apart. Next slide.
So virtual dates. So love during a pandemic can be very challenging, but you know, it is still possible. If you and your socially distanced significant other are trying to figure out how to spend a day together from across the internet connection, you're not alone. There are so many other people trying to figure that out. So just remember, you are not alone. Fortunately, there are lots of different opportunities and activities that you can share. And even if you can't be in the same room. Fortunately, there are things like, online museum tours, watching a concert recording on YouTube, having a movie night on Netflix Party or Hulu, which is a Google Chrome extension that you can actually download, and you watch basically movies or TV shows from the comforts of your own home. You can solve a virtual escape room, play other types of online games. You can also share a virtual dinner or drinks with someone on Zoom. And you can also have a painting party on Zoom with your significant other. But overall, whatever you do, you can still create fun and memorable moments with you and your partner.
So having the COVID talk. So when you first start dating or talking to someone, you typically ask about their hobbies, maybe some common interests, just to figure out if you two are or you all are compatible. But now there's this new level of compatibility added in. So you and your partner or partner's approach to COVID-19 safety. So some questions that you can ask are about your job, whether it's remote or in person, maybe precautions during and after interactions, if people wear face coverings, and if they wear them correctly as well. They wash their hands or use hand sanitizer, and if they're social distancing. Another question is, do they have symptoms and or are not feeling well as well? And then have they been diagnosed with COVID? Have they been exposed to someone that tested positive? Maybe about their living situation. So if they live with other people, if they live with higher risk groups, and then at restaurants and other public spaces. So how comfortable people are with indoor versus outdoor dining, or maybe not comfortable at all, or for any other public activities as well. But it's important to ask these COVID questions. They might feel uncomfortable to ask someone that you just met to see like what they're doing every day and all their activities, but it is essential for everyone's health and well-being. Just like it's important to ask about have conversations about sexually transmitted infections. And also please note that asking these questions do not confirm whether someone has COVID-19 or not. Next slide.
So now transitioning from those virtual dates to in-person dates. That can be kind of scary, but the transition from dating in real life to dating over Zoom may have been very uncomfortable in itself in the beginning because it is uncharted territory. But it's still possible. Meeting someone in real life after knowing them in only a virtual sense may be intimidating, but it's not impossible. Oftentimes, when we're talking to someone over text, we may like them via text, but then you get to the point where you meet the person and you're unsure about your feelings for that person. But when talking to someone virtually, it's not only important to get to know the person's likes and dislikes, it's very important to also find out the person's values, their beliefs, and get to the core of who they actually are. This is the time, you're getting to know someone virtually, and you can ask those hard questions. There aren't any expectations of you to having to meet up in person. You can stay virtual. But at the end of the day, with everything that's going on in the world, the most important tip is to not make any big decisions right now virtually. You know, you want to wait until we get back to some sense of normalcy. And then you can make those big decisions about, getting into a serious relationship or, meeting up in person and pursuing something with that person.
So So, safer sex practices. So, we understand that sex is normal, but it should always be with consent of all participating parties. Briefly, consent is um, freely given or not coerced or pressured into giving. It is reversible, so it can be taken away at any point. It's informed, so all participating parties are aware of what will be taking place and have asked any other important questions. So, maybe about birth control, barrier protection methods, things like that. It's enthusiastic and specific for whatever sexual activity it is given for. So, consider these tips to reduce the risk to yourself, your partners, and your community. So, if you are having physical sexual interactions with others, here are some tips that you can use. So, the first one is use barrier protection methods. So, those include condoms and dental dams. They can reduce contact with other people. And through the Student Wellness Center, through Titanwall, you can actually order free condoms through our condom availability program. More information will be given on the last slide if you would like to contact us for more information. Kissing can easily pass the virus. Rimming, so that's when the mouth is on the anus, that might spread the virus as well. We also suggest wearing a face covering to maybe reduce that contact with other people, to reduce the transmission of COVID as well. And then another one is masturbating together, and then washing up before and after sex. So this includes your hands, sex toys, and any surfaces that were touched. And then most importantly, make sure to skip sex if you or your partner are not feeling well. Next slide.
So overall, sex during COVID-19 is very difficult, but at the end of the day, you are your safest sex partner. During this time, you can masturbate just like Alexis mentioned by using toys, fingers, or hands, or you can, touch, stroke, or rub your own genitals for sexual pleasure. And there's no normal way to go about it. It's 100% safe and a healthy way to set your own comfort zones and to find out what feels good for you. So at the end of the day, just remember you are your safest sex partner.
So here are the references that we used for the entire presentation. Next slide.
And finally, for more information about COVID-19 or safer sex practices or any other health topic, you can actually follow our Instagram at Titanwell, or you could check out our website at fullerton.edu/student-wellness, or you can actually make an appointment with our sexual health educator to talk more about, prevention methods for birth control, barrier methods, or anything else by calling the number on your screen, which is 657-278-2800. So thank you, everyone.
That was so good. Thank you both for putting that together and sharing that with your fellow students. I mentioned earlier we did have some questions. I'm excited because you covered a lot of them in the presentation, but maybe we can go a little more specific with them. So let me pull those up and I'll just go ahead and read them out to you, and then you can answer for our audience. Okay. So the first one is, what are some unique, not lame, socially distanced dates? So maybe something other than just the usual FaceTime or Zoom, something a little more interactive and unique.
Yeah, so we mentioned a couple, during the presentation, just like Netflix party or Hulu, but some socially distanced date ideas are, having a pool party. So if one of you has a pool, there is that still possibility of having that 6 feet apart. And you can also have a backyard barbecue. While at that pool party, you can have a picnic at the park. You can also have outdoor wine tasting. So both of you can go pick up wine at your local, grocery store and, try different types of wine. You can also, go hiking. You can watch a movie together. Like I mentioned earlier on Netflix party. You can make a playlist as well, on Spotify for each other and listen to it together to see, um, you know, what what kind of music you think the other person might like. Or you can also be cooking over video chat as well.
Thank you. Those are all really good ideas. I think you could even use those for friends. It doesn't even have to be like a romantic partner. So I think I might use some of those myself. Jot those down. Okay, our next question. It comes from a student who it seems like they have met someone online and they've been dating via text, via FaceTime, and that partner is ready to meet in person, but the student who wrote into us still doesn't feel comfortable due to COVID. They're wondering how should they navigate that, and how do they move forward communicating that to their partner without hurting their feelings.
That's a great question. And sometimes that can be difficult to have that conversation because virtually and with everything going on, we just recommend probably just being honest with the other person, having that conversation and open communication, that you really like them and that you want to continue talking to them. But just with everything going on with COVID, that you might not feel comfortable just yet meeting up in person. And being honest will establish a good foundation for maybe a relationship in the future. So yeah, so just open communication, being honest with them, letting them know.
I completely agree. That is key, the open communication. So, our next question comes from a student who is considering meeting up with a partner in person for the first time. And they're wondering, is there a safe way to do this or safer? What tips do you have for taking that step of meeting up that first time? What safety precautions should students be taking?
Yeah, so safety is the number one concern right now, especially with COVID-19 when meeting up with someone. But some of the most safest tips is following those CDC guidelines and making sure that, everyone is on the same page, before meeting up in person. Some ways to stay safe uh, during this meetup is, wearing those face coverings the entire time, socially distancing, having hand sanitizer on hand, and then doing activities that are low risk for transmission of COVID-19, just like, going on a picnic, or even going hiking as well. Those are some great things that you can do.
Thank you. That is good advice. All right, into our next question. Um, what's a non-awkward way to ask how safe or careful the person I'm talking to has been? Should I just straight up ask them, have they been social distancing? Have they been wearing masks? Or is there a better way to talk about that topic without being so direct?
So for this question, I feel like everyone might have different communication methods, so it can just depend on the person. But some tips that you could bring up is just kind of bring up the topic of COVID-19 first, and then ask maybe like what precautions or safety measures that they have been taking. And then after that, this is where you can bring up your own experience, such as that, like I wear a mask when I go out, I socially distance, maybe because I live with other people and are always trying to be safe as possible. So that's an example that you could use. But yeah, it definitely depends on the person. You can always switch up this terminology and everything, but it's definitely important to bring up before meeting up in person.
Yeah, I agree. And I would add maybe the earlier you bring it up, the better. Just kind of get it out of the way. Make sure you're on the same page, or if you're not, you're willing to compromise in that way. So, but I love that. Great advice. And it is going to differ from person to person, right? Just like the other ways we communicate change from person to person. All right. The next question is, do you have any tips on how to ask someone to get tested before meeting up in person?
Yeah, so there are a couple things that you can ask, a person if you want them to get tested. You can first start expressing that you're excited to meet up in person for the first time, but also express that you're not questioning their habits of COVID-19 and the safety precautions that they're taking, but that you are concerned for others that you may live with, such as, your mom, your dad, or anyone else that you may be living with. And stress that if you don't want to get a test, that it's totally okay, but you would want to socially distance, during whatever activity that you may want to do, whether it's wearing the mask, having hand sanitizer, or doing any other precautions. A scenario could be, saying, I'm excited that we're deciding to meet up in person. I'm just concerned about the folks I live with. Are you comfortable getting a COVID test and sending the results before we meet up in person? So, I make sure that I'm taking care of myself and that you're taking care of yourself as well. If not, I completely understand. Maybe we can choose an activity that is outdoors that will be 6 feet apart. But at the end of the day, if you know y- the person is not comfortable meeting up at the end, then without getting a test, then just be honest with them. At the end of the day, you just want to be honest with the person about you know whatever's going on.
That's good advice. I like the idea of framing it about, I trust you, I trust your habits, but I'm really concerned about my family who I live with or something like that. Takes the pressure off a little bit, takes the heat off. And of course, letting them know if you don't feel comfortable getting a test, that's fine. We just may have to go a different route with our date. Love that. Okay. Moving right on into it. So this is from a student who is saying, okay, say I'm on a social distance first date and I'm really interested in the person, but I don't feel safe enough to kiss them yet. I know that's like the number one way that the virus spreads is through saliva. So I'm not ready for that first kiss. How can I show them I'm still interested and not make it seem like I'm turning them down if they try to kiss me?
Yeah, so that can be a little bit of a tough situation. I feel like I keep repeating it, but communication is always important. I feel like not everyone can know what you're thinking inside your head. So it's important to just be honest. Maybe let them know that you really like them and maybe you see something happening in the future, maybe something more serious. But maybe you want to take things slow and you're not ready to kiss them just yet. And just say it's because of like COVID concerns, but that you still are willing to continue like talking to them and maybe hanging out if you are hanging out already and everything. So
Thank you. Great advice. Okay, this is our final question. Um, and it is about dating other people or dating someone who you're not sure is dating other people. So the question is, do you all have any tips on how to ask if the person I'm seeing is planning to date slash sleep with other people while we're talking, while we're in the beginning stages of our relationship? And then they said in quotations, this is for safety reasons.
Yeah, so that's a great question. That a concern that that we've all had even prior to COVID. Are you sleeping with anyone? Um, and trying to find out how you can stay safe. But at the end of the day, you want to express that you really like them and that you're excited to explore things further with them, but you want to know if they're dating or sleeping with other people. It's going back with, you just want to be honest with someone, because once you're honest with someone, you're setting up a good foundation for a healthy relationship at the end of the day. A scenario could be like, I enjoy being with you, but I also am concerned with my health. If either of us are sleeping with other people, that's completely fine, but I'd like to know so I can take necessary precautions for myself.
More amazing advice. Thank you both. That was our final question. I really enjoyed your presentation. I know that other students are going to get a lot from it. It's so special to have you two who are also students. And so you understand the struggle, you understand the questions that come to mind. To be able to deliver these presentations is so amazing. So thank you for being here. That's all we have for today. Did you all have any closing remarks for the students before we log off?
Yeah, just thank you so much for having us. It was great talking about dating and safer sex tips. You know, at the end of the day, dating and safe sex during COVID is difficult. It's very hard, but just know that there are still creative ways that you can do, to overcome a lot of the things that, you know, are happening virtually.
I agree with Frankie. I second everything he says. But yeah, so thank you, Jennifer, for inviting us to come talk and present some content on dating during COVID.
You are so welcome. Thank you both again. And Titans, these two are a great resource along with the rest of our folks at Titanwall. There is so much good information out there and so many resources. So make sure you're checking them out. We'll make sure to have all that information in the description of this video, as well as we'll link to the Titanwall Instagram where there is even more information shared on a daily, consistent basis. So thank you all again. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you share with a friend, and we'll see you next time. Bye.